State the period and amplitude for each of the following circular functions. For part A, we have the circular function y equals 3 times sine of 2x. And when we're looking for the amplitude, we look at the 3, which is the value that's multiplied by the trig functions, so 3 times sine of x, and that means that the amplitude will equal 3. When we're trying to determine the period, the formula to do that is 2 pi on n, where n is the value that's multiplied by the x, so in this case, n equals 2. So that means our period is equal to 2 pi divided by 2, which is equal to pi. If we have a look at a sketch of this graph, so we have y equals 3 sine of 2x sketched here. So when we go from the mean y value of this function, which is y equals 0, to its maximum, which is 3, so this length here, that is the amplitude, which we said before is 3. And when we go from 0 to pi, which is this interval here, that is the period. So that's the length of the interval that it takes for one full cycle of our graph. For part B, we have the circular function y equals negative 4 times cos of x divided by 2. And the same thing, when we're looking for the amplitude, we look at the value that is multiplied by the circular function. So in this case, the amplitude is going to equal 4. And it's really important to remember that we ignore the negative sign. It's just the 4 that gives the amplitude. Once again, the period has a formula of 2 pi divided by n, where n is the value multiplying x, so n equals a half for this case. So that gives a period of 2 pi divided by a half, which is equal to 4 pi. So on our sketch of this function, we can see that our amplitude is the distance from the mean y value, which is y equals 0, and the maximum, which is 4. So that is the amplitude, which we said before equals 4. And now when we go between 0 and 4 pi, that's the interval of one cycle of the graph, so that's the period. And we worked that out before to be 4 pi. For part C, we have the circular function y equals 3 divided by 5 times sine of pi x over 12. So once again, to find the amplitude, we look at the value that's multiplying by the circular function. So the amplitude is going to equal 3 divided by 5. And now once again for the period, we have the formula 2 pi over n, where n is the value that's multiplied by the x. So in this case, it is pi over 12, not just pi, but the whole lot, pi divided by 12. So our period is going to equal 2 pi divided by pi over 12. And to evaluate that, we can write it as 2 pi over 1, which is the top line as a fraction, multiplied by the reciprocal of the denominator, which is 12 over pi. So the pi's will cancel, and we're just left with 2 times 12, which is 24. So on the sketch of this graph, we can see that our amplitude is between the mean y value, which is y equals 0, and the maximum, which is 0.6. And 0.6 is just the same as 3 over 5. So usually I'd just suggest you leave that as the fraction, which we said before was 3 over 5. And now if you go between 0 and 24, which is this interval here, that's the period of the graph. And previously we found that to be 24.